Okay, so that's all done. What we did, we gave this 2 coats of Johnson's Clear, which is this stuff here. Obviously, a bit of trouble getting hold of that these days. There is other variants of it out now, but they're not quite as good as the old one. So what I tend to do, if you can't get hold of that, a couple of coats of a normal glossy. You could use something like Tamiya's, any ones like that. Just a couple of coats, but it's got to be totally dry, because what we're going to do now is move on with the weathering. For that, I'm going to be using the Pro Modeler's Dark Weathering Wash. So all we do, make sure it's had a good old shake first. Okay, and when you're happy, now the thing is, obviously you do get clay bits at the bottom, so it really is important to make sure there's nothing sitting on the bottom. Another thing you can do, just pop along with your brush, okay, and give it a bit of a swish around under there. Then all we're going to do is go right the way over everywhere with the dark dirt. So just make sure you work it all in to absolutely everywhere. Okay, all the panel lines and over everything. Now the reason for going over everything is because it will act as a bit of dirt and giving it a grimy type of look to it all and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is just literally work this everywhere. Those of you who are used to the weathering wash will notice this one's a slightly different colour to normal. This is a new colour, if you like, which is out, which is just sort of enhancing the dark dirt's appearance to be able to work with any colour. And also it just sort of brings us in line, because obviously we've got the blacks and things like that. So if you're thinking that's a different colour, that's the reason why. But all you do is just whip this right the way over the entire model. So I'll just carry on getting this over everything. Okay, so the wash has been on now for about an hour. So what we're doing now is just getting it off moist tissue, and then obviously just circular motions, because we want it to be sort of a dirty look without being sort of grimy, if that makes sense. So all we're doing is going off absolutely everywhere, just like this. We're going to do some little touch-ups on it and some little anti-corrosion marks. So if you have got any areas which are really dirty, I've got a couple of little decal marks as well. So I'm going to actually spray those to give sort of that corrosion, anti-corrosion sort of blur to it. So you get off all the big areas just like this, and obviously for little bits around detailed areas, all we do is pinch it out with my teeth a little bit, in with a cotton bud, and you can get into all those little nooks and crannies, just like so, by using the cotton bud. So we're just going to carry on getting this all off for the moment. Okay, so the next big thing we can do is actually the anti-corrosion work. Now I've already started on this as well, and it's going to be one of those tricky things to try and pick up on camera, but hopefully you can see down in here, we've actually put this on. Now if you're going to do this, it's one of those things that comes with a little bit of practice and a little bit of playing with it, because the technique that I use can go wrong very, very quickly. So you might want to use masking up. So if I show you that first, if you get something like this, now what I've got here is a mottling template. This one's made by Edard, but I know other companies make them as well. Or you could just make it out of a bit of card. And what you actually do, pick a nice pattern out of what you want, something like this. You can just lay it over, spray in that area, take it away, you get a nice sort of touch up. And by using the motley type of shapes, you'll get a nice sort of random effect to your paintwork, to something like on these. Now all I did doing it freehand, if we show you down here on this bit of wing, all we've actually got here is a mix of the original colour and then just lightened up just a touch. Now you could darken it or lighten it, whichever way you want to do it. Personally, I like to lighten it, so what I do, put a little bit of thinners in it. Now this is a very, very wet mix. There again, we're talking about sort of 30% paint to 70% thinners. So you do get the spidering and everything else, and we're shooting at quite high air pressure. So this is why I'm saying about, you know, play with this before you come along. Basically, what you're going to do is flood the area, so it gives it that sort of effect of paint bunching up. So when we come along like down here, if we do down here, we come along and we put in quite a wet, and normally it'll be far, far too wet for what we've done. But because it's giving it sort of that anti-corrosion type of look to it, we can get away with it quite nicely. So if we just bring you in a little bit on the close-up, just dodge the Hawkeye out of the way a minute. Okay, so if we do here, I can show you roughly what I mean. So we're going to come in and go around, and as you can probably see on there, it goes on very wet and gives us that look. Then all we're going to do, we'll just cover up some of this black work. Ideally we'd like a bigger one, but for here it'd be fine. And then we can just come along, okay, run it out, and it's quite a wet look. Now the reason it'll be nice and wet, as we've done it like here, is that what will happen is when it dries it gets quite a hard edge, quite a difference in the colour, and that way you can see it standing out nicely, as we've done on here, to give this type of effect. And as I say, the more colours you give it and the more it will build up just a little bit more. Now this one actually is looking a little bit darker on here, and I'm not quite sure exactly why that's happened. In theory it should be lighter, but as I say, it probably is where we've put on thinner coats of the original colour. This is quite you know, just a very hard line in there, and with the pre-shading underneath it's probably, you know, sort of affecting it all, but it gives a nice sort of contrast. So I was saying, it doesn't matter if it's light or dark, but that's the type of effect we get getting on with. So all I've done, or have been doing, as still am, is going around the entire of the model, picking out areas to do it. Now you might be able to see on the close-up, we've done at the top here, the refueling points at the top, pretty always going to have a bit, and going around, and on the normal cam you might be able to pick it out, some of the areas on there. But we're going around absolutely everywhere with it. Two things it'll do. One, it's going to break up it looking like a grey brick. That's what the wash does, and the pre-shading, and this will just give it that sort of more dirty, mottly look. And you might be able to see on the close-up underneath here, we've gone along and we've certainly put on some down the back here, around the back end, and then underneath, and we're just working our way around all the areas, because this one's going to be quite a dirty, a worn, end of cruise type of look to it, and that's the type of effect I'm going on with. So I'm just going to carry on going around all these areas. At the same time, obviously, we washed up all the gear, the undercarriage, the things like that. Move that this way, you see it a bit better. And as you can see, all we've done, go on with a cotton bud, and we just got the wash out. Now if you're using an enamel wash or something else, you'll have to do that. The other thing we've done, as you can see here, we've done the undercarriage doors. Obviously they're deckled and done. Now this red line work always can be a bit of a headache. So if I show you what we did, very, very straightforward. If I just snip out one of these a sec. Let's just have this off of the sprue. Okay, a nice little two ways of doing this. Okay, I'll show you the real way before I cheat. Thin brush, bit of XF7 red, run it around the outside as I normally do it. A nice, great little cheap way is a Sharpie pen. Now this is a little dinky one, only going to cost you a couple of quid. Okay, so you can just come along like this, and then literally all you're going to do is just run it down the groove, and you can just literally drag it down like that. Job done. How simple is that? Dries very, very quickly. These are permanent, so once they're on, you don't have to worry about them coming off again. The only thing I would say is make sure your surface is dry on there first, because if you do come along and you've got some wet paint, it will absolutely ruin your pen. Okay, so you go along like that, and then just do the edges, touch them in. And the great thing is you've got lots of control over this, about where it's going. You don't have to worry. But there we go. That one all done. 2 seconds with a Sharpie pen. And normally if I was doing that, you'd have to rub it off and carry on and everything else like that. But as I say, quick way of doing it. And we've done all the other doors and bits and pieces exactly the same way, just with the Sharpie pen to run around and do those. So that's those all taken care of. The gear as well, it's pretty straightforward. 2 halves go together to make the wheel. I already sprayed up the hub, and then we've gone along and we've painted up the wheel. And then the easiest way was I painted the tyre part black first, as we've got here on the sprue. So we painted this tyre area first, done the hub white, okay, and then we put them together, and then all we had to do is take care of the seam line around the front, and there again, pretty straightforward, very easy to do. So if you wanted to get on with that, I'm going to carry on weathering up and mottling this one up a little bit more, and then we can start getting things together. Okay, so we're going to get the props like this. The quickest and easiest way to do that is to paint them all black as we've done before. Then what we've done, we just masked off the edge bit. Now these are very easy to do, because the great thing about these is that they've actually got some raised panel lines, and for once, you know, they're actually quite easy because you can just butt mask up to them. All we've done then is sprayed them red. So then what we're going to do, we're just going to mask up now with some masking tape. So what we're going to do is try and find something that's about the right type of thickness, and I think that's probably going to be around about the 1.5mm. So we're just going to grab a piece, and then we'll just wrap it around. So we're going to go right the way around the entire thing. We don't want to pull it too tight on the back, otherwise what will happen is it will sort of slightly curve it. But that one's on like that, so we'll just do the other one. We'll do 2 to show you. So what we want to do is just take your time lining these up, because it is quite important, because it's going to be one of those areas where your eye is going to be drawn to it, to seeing the lovely detail. So we're just going to pull that back in. So what we do, we've got some flat white. Now obviously we just sprayed red before, so you want to make sure it's all totally blown through, otherwise it might come out a little bit red first. Then all we're going to do is just lightly airbrush right over those, both sides. Okay, cut into air just to dry them off a bit. Then another coat so it's not showing pink through. So just drying down like that. Just dry those off a sec. Just like that. And then what should happen is you should just be able to come along, unmask those like that, and then if we can just do the same one just in here. Obviously it's all a little bit tricky to get in, because obviously normally you'd wait for this to all totally dry, but you can show you what I mean. And there we go, that's the tips done. Just like that, pretty straightforward, very simple. So I'll just do the others and then we can get these fitted on. Okay, so as you can see, we've just got this moved on a little bit. Basically, we've now installed all the aerials underneath, as you can see down there like that. We've got the flaps mounted at the back, which obviously just hang down just like so. Around the front here, we've got a little lifting hook. It's going to go on the front, this one here. Your big blade antenna, this little lump over here. Okay, and just basically, just in forward of the escape hatch is where that goes, as it lines up with the square at the back. As I say, these little aerial mounts on at the back, and then what we're going to have is obviously we'll have the core coming from the back, we'll come to these, and then onto the front one, but it's something we'll do in a moment. Now obviously, because it's going to get a bit complex with the wing section going on and things like that, it's going to be easiest to give it a flat coat now. And the other reason why, when we come to putting these wings together, we've got to put some clear lights on the corners, so we don't want to have those all done. Now the easiest thing for making up your own, if you wanted to, obviously there's plenty of flats you can go out and buy. Extra acrylics will probably be my preferred choice, and then after that you've got anybody's you want. A way of doing it, if you mix some Johnson's Clear with a little bit of flat base or any type of gloss clear, as long as it's an acrylic, so obviously you're using acrylic with this. Now the big thing is, I know a lot of people when they're doing this end up with little white flaky spots, looks like snow. That's because you've got too much flat base in there and it hasn't totally dissolved, if you like, in the future. As a rule of thumb, people say what ratios to use. Extremely hard, because it seems to be different every time you use it. As what I tend to do is about 20%. So 20% flat base to 80% future tends to give me a nice type of flat finish. Now I have a bottle of it already done here, and what happens is it settles down the bottom very, very easily. So you've got to give it a good shake. Don't worry about shaking it, because obviously it's going to be atomized shortly anyway. So we'll get that one done. Over with our airbrush. Nice high air pressure, because obviously this is a flat coat. Don't go over the top filling up your, your actual airbrush with this stuff. And then all we're going to do, if we just move the main aircraft out of the way a moment, all we're going to do is literally, let's check our flow, it's just a couple of light passes, just like that, back again, and you'll probably see even on camera it starts to cut to air just to dry it off. Okay, and it'll make it quite handleable. Okay, in again, just like so. And as we do this, we just talk, all I've done as well, we've put the little latching system on the back, but we'll talk about that a bit in a moment when I actually come to install it. So what we do, we just stand this up out of the way a moment, and just have a view. So we do the same for the other set of wings. Same with the props, things like that. We can dull them down so the deck will sit quite nicely. We can do those. Obviously we'll do the flaps and all the bits, and then obviously the main aircraft itself. So if we just start underneath here, and all we're doing is just keep it very light, dusty, because as soon as you get in there and start to flood it, what will happen is that you end up with shiny bits, because you just want it to dust on. There we go, it's one colour cut gone. Okay, so we just have a quick refill. And we'll just get this all well over the back. Okay. As I say, don't let it look wet. As soon as it looks wet, we've had it. Turning around. Just make sure you do a lot of the black work to make sure that's dulled down. Otherwise it's going to look quite shiny. The gear, the wheels, all the bits and pieces around the front. Okay, now that will be quite touchable in the next sort of few seconds, but don't go around grabbing it, because obviously what happens is the future's still quite soft. You come along and then obviously you're going to leave big fingerprints in it. So we'll gently just move this guy out the way a moment. Now over on this one, we've actually got this sort of flattened off already. Okay, now what you need to do is paint just the underside down here. There's two ways of doing this. You can either just come along with your actual flap area and you're going to poke him in, so he'll be hanging out the back, something like this, which is very nice, and just colour in that area. Or you can just come along with some red paint. Now you could spray this, or you could do it by hand, whichever way you want to do it. And then just for speed's sake here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this by hand. I'll show you a little technique. So we've got quite a bit on the brush. All we're going to do is just going to run it up and let the brush go along. And if you go over, just immediately give it a wipe the other way. Okay, so then we just go along here. Okay, slightly over, give it a wipe straight away. Okay, so we can just go down into these bits here. And because you're not really going to be able to see in here too well, you can get away with hand painting it. And you're not going to have to go all the way to the edge, because obviously we're not going to be going that far. Okay, just here. Pulley movements to the top. There we go. And then by the time the top one sits on there, for the same for the other one, it will look nice and red and the job's all done. You can do the same actually on the actual main one as well. That one's going to need it underneath there as well, but it will just keep those areas looking nice. And as I say, it's one of those things that you're not massively going to see it, because when it's all folded up, it's quite compact down there, but it is a little area. As I said before, we've got these on. Very straightforward, just got a couple of little latches in there. They're going to go in and take care of that. So once they're in, and also we've got another little blade antenna just down there. So we'll just let these dry off a moment. We can get them together and we can show you actually about installing it onto the wing section. Okay then, so if we get the wing area today, and on the close-up you can see really how this one just goes. It's very straightforward. The only thing it does is a little bit clean at the moment, so we'll give that a bit of a dirty up shortly. So what we do, this outer, the actual aileron here, that's just going to sit and will probably be a very nice tight push fit. So we're just going to cram that in. And when you look at the photos, when it's hanging up, it sort of slightly tilts down a bit. So that's what I'm going to do, just by leaving it like that. So it's got a bit of a tilt. Make sure you've got your numbers around the right way. So that's going to fit in here, and then we'll hide that area where we didn't paint. There again, how this pushes in and how far, you just want to make sure it's square. Because it's a hydraulic bleed through thing, so obviously it lost hydraulics and everything else, they all tend to hang at different angles and things like that. Now, this little end light, what we've done, we've used a bit of clear green, got some X25, then all we've done is literally put a tiny little bit, it says picking it up the right way, there's a little hole which represents the bulb in the end, and we've put it in like that. Then all we do, we've got some gator glue here, but any PVA glue will do, and we're just going to run it quite a lot around the edge. Normally I wait sort of about 30 seconds for this to totally dry off, but we want the bulb to be coming out of the main wing area itself, but it's going to come along and sit in, and you want the glue to all squash out. Just like so. And then if you use a cotton bud, just wet the end, I lick it, whichever way you want to do it, okay, and just wipe away the excess. Just like that, and then on the top, and then obviously make sure you're all at the right height all the way around. Final little, just a push in there to make sure you're all happy how it's sitting, and as I say, wipe away that extra glue. That will dry nice and clear, and that one's done. So there's our wing section all ready to go on. As you can probably see on the close-up there, it's looking nice and grimy and dirty. That's the type of effect we're after. And then we can hook these on. Now, if I just put that there to dry off a sec, it's personal choice how you put this thing all together. Now, personally, because I hope to take this to shows and things like that, I didn't want to be in the situation of having to worry myself to death about this in transport. So, the frisbee on the top, for instance, that's going to be a loose fit. It's going to come on and off, he says, hoping it will go down the old, which it hasn't. I need to take a little bit off of that, but it should just fit with a bit of a persuasion. I won't over force that, but normally it just slides down there. So what we'll do is take a little bit off of this centre peg just to thin it down a little bit so it just drops on. Okay, now the wing sections themselves, as they're going to come in, what actually happens is, if we show you on the close-up here, right back here you can see that little hole. Now that little hole, let's get some more light in here, that little hole at the top here, what actually happens is that part of the wing is going to go up on there, and then back here, these little pegs that are hanging off the back, the little hook is going to go on there. Now naturally it would latch over the top. We're going to have it so it pushes on. So bearing in mind this one's all wet and we're going to be rather delicate, just to give you an idea of how it's going to work, what I'm going to do is, as you can see here on the one at the back, we're just going to slide them in the hole. Just like that. Oop, we've overshot already. Slide it in the back hole like that, and then, oh, we've got the wrong wing on. Might help if we had the right wing. It will go a lot easier. With all modelling, quick tip, if it's ever not working, there's usually a very good reason to it. Okay, so there we go. This one goes up in that top hole, so it slides along like that, and then down here at the front on this one here, you've got the actual system where hopefully it will go up. Now it will just hang very nicely like that. So we're done and we're in. So you can pop it down just like that, and the wing section's on, and we don't have to worry about it. I'm very happy, and that's great for taking it shows because we can take it in and out. Now there is a couple of little locating little brackets which are going to go in, so what we'll do, we'll fix them, but only going to glue one half, either to the fuselage or to the wing. That way, when we're quite happy, we finished at the show, or we're moving it around, we can just take it off, pack these separate, so the model itself can go like this, and that way it's nice and safe and we don't have to worry about. But there we go, that's just a little thing to worry about. Now down here on the bottom, obviously we've got the aids on. We've also put the clear lights on. Now I've put them on with a little dab of super glue just underneath. It's just a clear part, and in the minute we'll put some red on there. Down here at the back you can see on the close-up, tail hooks in, so that's straightforward, painted white, and then we just went along and put in the actual stripes with a little bit of black paint, and that one's on as well. Tail fins are fixed in, just a dab of super glue are done. Down here at the back we've managed to knock off one of these little things. Now these are static discharges, you see on the close-up, you see little aerials hanging off the back, and it's designed to get rid of static electricity off the aircraft. What I'll do is we'll just get tiny little bits of sprue, which I'll show you in a moment, and we'll just glue them on. But they all hang loosely in the wind and that, so don't worry about them being straight and things. Obviously when they're flying they're very straight. So the major thing we can do now is a little bit of unmasking, which is always the horrible bit where you find out, because obviously when we're doing a modern aircraft you can take the canopy off, we can have a look and we can see if it's all okay underneath, and if it is gone wrong we can normally get it open and polish it. This one, if it's not right, is going to be a pain. So opening the top, and thank goodness we've got some green, which is always a good sign. So there we go, we did green on these top ones, and then if we just undo these side ones, and it looks like we've got a little bit of filler dust rattled around in there. So we just, in fact we've got a lot of filler dust gone around in there, which is a real shame. So what we can do, I don't know how well you can pick these up on the close-up. If we bring you in as close as we can, you see these areas here, you might be able to see little specks of filler dust have got in this cockpit area. You probably can't see too well on there, but you know, if you're not worried about it, you know, and you're quite happy, you don't have to worry. What I might do is slit open one of these side windows because it's in PVA, and we can go along and we can actually get a cotton bud in there and clean them out. But it has come up very, very nicely. Quite happy with how that one's looking. Apart from that, a little bit of a shame, but almost I was expecting it. As I say, what I'm gonna do, I'll bite the bullet, so we're gonna pick the dirtiest side, which will be this one. So then what we'll do, we'll just come along here. If I try and show you at the same time, we're gonna get a knife down in here. I'm gonna cut this little guy open. Okay, just roll a blade. And we're going to open up this window, hopefully. That's it. There's our window open and off. Now that's the beauty of this, because it's PVA glue, we can do that. So we're just going to clean up these bits of plastic. Okay, cotton bud, clean end. We're going to go right the way through. I'm going to give it a bit of a dust about in the insides to clean them all up. A little bit of overspray. Okay, check it all in there. That's looking a lot better. As you can probably see in there now, we're pretty clear, so we're very happy with how that is. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll just clean up the inside of this one. Just like so, and then what we'll do, just for the moment, we'll pop this one back on, but what we'll do is we're going to come along and physically clean this up nicely. So just for the moment, there we go, that's the put back in, and then what we'll do, we'll go in there and we'll tidy it up with a little bit of paint. But you can see on the close-up, it works very nicely. You know, taking care of that a lot better than we thought it was. But you need to clean out those windows. But as I said, it's something that we'll come back and take care of. Now the next thing is going to be the aerial wiring. Now the aerial wiring itself is a bit of a nightmare. As I said, you can get elastic thread to put it across and do things like that. And it is a very nice, quite a straightforward way of doing it. But in some ways, the way I'm going to show you now, I just prefer it. It's sort of hassle-free. It's the right length. You don't have to worry about breaking. So what we've got here is what we call Unbreakable Thread. Okay, this is your standard. I'm just trying to think. It's 100% silk, so it's very strong. So what we're going to do is make a very nice long measure of it. Okay, we're just going to go into half, something like this. Alright, then what we're going to do, for the moment, we're just going to wrap it round the front aerial on the front, and we're going to use a tiny bit of super glue. So what we're going to do is just going to come around the front like this. And hopefully we can lasso it slightly on just like that. So we just use a bit more glue on the back half. Okay, it's going to be a bit of a long drawn out thing this, but we're just going to let that set just a second, just start to bite, just like so. And when it starts to bite, we can twist it, cross it over, and then we can run it out to the next one. So if you just sort of bear with me for a moment.